Bottom-up attribution. What the biggest failure that most people really rely on, based on some of the biggest lies inside of digital marketing, based on false ego promises and a lack of inability to understand numbers, that basically has propped up most agencies for the better part of a decade, if not far longer. This is one of the biggest lessons almost everybody needs to understand, how you can stop failing and being really stressed out and really start putting forward the path to success, because you're no longer going to rely on bottom-up attribution. So, what am I talking about here? And first off, thank you very much for watching this far. And if you really enjoy it, down, I think it's over here, is the subscribe button. And if you like what you're seeing, go ahead and click that thing. And I think next to that, there might be a share button. So go ahead and hit that. And I would love it if you find value in what I have to say, if you start sharing with some other people. Spread the love, people. That's what it's all about. That is what it is all about. So anyway, let's get down to the bottom line here. Now, bottom-up attribution is the idea that you can assign credit for a sale to a click. Now, this is basically the foundation of almost every ad agency that has spawned up in the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, honestly, maybe 20, because you can include Google, but I'm not going down that road. We'll pick those fights another day. This is in Facebook alone. So let's just say the last 5 years in Facebook, and people saying, well, I can get you X ROAS on your Facebook ads, or, hey, look, I can get credit for these sales, right? You start hearing all these people talk about 28-day click attribution and 7-day click attribution, and trying to take credit for everybody else's work that really doesn't matter for your overall success. If somebody starts talking to you about, well, who gets credit for that sale, you're going to start seeing a lot of really uncomfortable squirming in a chair, because the bottom-up attribution idea is built around the concept that somebody should get credit. Now, I'm going to show you this fun little sticky note that basically shows the fraud that defines the business model of almost every single ad agency that I've been seeing for the last few years. Although I'm very happy to say that I'm starting to see more and more people align themselves with business success rather than taking credit for everybody else's work. Here we go. So, bottom-up attribution says, this sale belongs to this person. So let's say somebody clicked on a Facebook ad 5 days ago. From there, they went to this site and they left. The next day, they go and search. They go to the site, maybe then they sign up for the email list and maybe the SMS. They get an email, they open it, cool, and then they get an SMS. They click on that SMS. They make a purchase. According to every single one of these channels, SMS, email, search, and Facebook, you got a sale. The problem is, you didn't make 4 sales. You made 1. Now, what almost every single ad agency that I've seen in business, especially the upstarts that were founded basically by poorly trained, overworked, and underappreciated individuals who went out on their own right and were like, screw it, I can start my own business doing this stuff. And then they in turn underpaid people that they overworked and poorly trained and were in generation after generation after generation, is they focus on this, Facebook. And they might even get to the view, which is fantastic. Now, what we saw with the implementation of iOS 14 was people complaining left, right, and center about the inability to really rely on delayed attribution from this click. And by the way, delayed attribution is a fucking lie. Check that one out. So with that being said, let's get back to the piece here. Now, this sticky note, this fundamental little graph that completely undermines the business model of 80% of the folks inside of Facebook advertising. Now, another big piece that we need to address here is the fact that there are multiple individuals that get credit for the sale. Now, the bottom line is your finance department doesn't give a shit that everybody's trying to take credit for everybody else's work. And your fulfillment center is clearly not sending out 4 packages. And your credit card company doesn't give a shit, and Shopify doesn't show it. And then we're going to say, well, you know, the attribution's off because Facebook's got this, but then email did that, and then search this. And you start to see people say, well, you know, it really just branded search is total shit. You can just throw that out. Okay, cool. So let's just say that the person running Google is completely fucking worthless to your business. Why do you even have them? It's a big thing to maybe take a look at. And for the record, very big businesses rely very heavily on that. I brought this company called Persil to the United States. It's a laundry detergent. And I found out that you cannot buy the word Tide anywhere because Tide has a 7-figure daily budget to make sure that you can't own that. Okay? So we say, okay, well, that's fine, but our email is just generating a huge lift. Yeah, but if your email is generating a huge lift, why do you need retargeting on Facebook as soon as somebody signs up for your email address? Why? Right? So if you have fundamental, complete confidence that email is generating all your business, why retarget anybody on Facebook that signed up for email? Generally speaking, it's because we know that email is not going to make all the sales, and we want Facebook to look good because we're ego-driven. Last thing, SMS. As soon as somebody clicks on the text message, why are you spending anything? Why not exclude anybody if you have their phone number? All of this other stuff, why possibly do it? Now, I'm being facetious. I understand that would absolutely tank most businesses. But you have the problem, especially anybody that tries to deliver you with a straight face reporting that says anything after a 1-day post-click is a legitimate number. Now, I've had this argument with a lot of folks on the internet, and to be fair, I've ruffled a lot of feathers with folks that basically just didn't understand how wrong they were. And that's okay. I'm here to help you not make the same mistake. The idea is bottom-up attribution. This sale does not actually belong to any of these channels. It kind of belongs to all of them. And then we go down this other complete fucking failure called multi-touch attribution. Now, I'll tell you, I've been in businesses that have really tried to do this, and I've seen people really try to put together a solution. But if you notice, there isn't one. They've tried for literally decades now and spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to try to solve for that problem. And really, the only solution to multi-touch attribution that exists out in the marketplace is methods used by extraordinarily large businesses, by a group of senior vice presidents to basically all cut up the slice of the pie in a way that makes all of them have a job. It's self-preservation. It doesn't move the business forward. It's basically just insecurity. My point is, bottom-up attribution is bullshit. So, what do? Now that we know that anybody that gives you a data point in reporting that is past a 1-day click is basically just lying to you and trying to take credit for everybody else's work. And the reason we say 1-day click, first off, that's the unit of measure shared by every legitimate advertising platform on the internet. And basically, it's around the idea that if that's the smallest unit of measure that we can share, well, then everything can be measured against it. And if everything can be measured against the same thing, then we can really start getting to what we call top-down attribution, right? Or what we call many different names, but ultimately we get down to our ecosystem ROAS here. Contribution to the margin by investment. And this is where I say the only metric you actually need to manage any paid media effort is spend. That's it. Everything else is a vanity metric, basically, at that point. But we'll get to that at some other time. I'm not going to try to blow your minds too much here, but just let it be known, I'm currently managing tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a month for brands, and the only metric I look at is revenue and spend. Because that's all you need. Because those numbers don't lie. Now, what we're getting to here, ultimately with this, is the idea that saying any one of these things takes credit is absolute bullshit. And also, because we're giving maybe Facebook a 7-day and then Google a 30-day and then email, well, if they opened it, they get credit. All of that is 100% nonsense. You can't compare things if the yardstick is different, right? Like, do you know the unit rate of measure differentiation that you're going to apply in some algebraic formula to take a 30-day click off a search to make it apply to the 7-day click off of Facebook that's going to say something that happened on SMS within an hour? Do you know that math? Because I'm going to tell you, you don't. Nobody knows that math because every user behaves differently. There isn't a right answer to that problem. It's like, what's the square root of a bowl of cereal? Or like, how much do the dreams of a butterfly weigh? It's a bullshit question. So my point is, the last thing that we need to say is, well, why is a 1-day click even valuable? First off, it's the shared measurement across all platforms. Second, the idea basically is that if you take any one of these actions, you're very unlikely to then take an additional one of these actions. For instance, if you click on the Facebook ad and buy something, it's probably not somewhere in that process also you searching something and opening an email and SMS. But I just showed you, to start this off, a very reasonable thing where you could hit every one of these in a 7-day period. Which basically says anybody trying to show you Facebook reporting on a 7-day is lying to you. And it's either because A, they don't understand simple mathematics, B, they don't know how digital marketing works, or 3, they don't think you're smart enough to realize that they lack the integrity to stand behind good data. That's a point I will absolutely die on a hill with. And for the record, I used to work at an ad agency, and my whole job was to undermine other ad agencies and steal parts of the budget, because I would hold people accountable to this simple math. And to be fair, some of those companies that I used to steal their ad budget from no longer do business in digital advertising because the bail has been pulled back. We understand that they're full of shit. And that's why Facebook doesn't really give a shit. Because Facebook doesn't need that person to really feel good about things, because the metric of truth has not really ever changed. This truth has been the same since like the late 90s. I mean, since a click was invented and was trackable. This truth has still existed. So, what are we really getting down to here? What we need to understand is, when we spend more money on Facebook, does that help or hurt our bottom line? When we spend more money on search, does that help or hurt our bottom line? Now, a really fancy term that has been thrown around a lot this year is called MER. Now, yes, MER comes off the back of a very, very old style of measurement that comes from television and from print and from billboards. It's called basically market lift. Now, I've been preaching how to solve this problem for years. It's called ecosystem ROAS, and wonderful to start seeing people take the other versions of the name of this and really start to spit it out. Because believe me, the exact same people that were mad at me, calling me trolls for the last 3-4 years are now starting to basically quote the things that I've been telling them for years, but with a different brand name, and now they're happy and preaching that stuff forward. And ultimately, I'm very happy because I'm seeing more and more people see success and less stress in their path to happiness with their business. And that's all that really matters. Now, the last thing that I'm going to get to here is, what you need to do is understand the incrementality you get from every one of these marketing efforts. What does having SMS actually do for you? What does having email actually do for you? What about search? What about Facebook? What happens when you spend more or you spend less on any one of these platforms? If you don't know the answer to that question, then you have a wonderful bit of clarity on what the next 30, 60, 90 days of your business efforts need to be. Because the honest truth is, you're never going to get to a 7, 8, 9-figure business in a sustainable way unless you have some pretty decent understanding of this math. And I'll tell you, it's not just about raising that business capital. It's not just about seeing that success. But when you go to a banker or you try to get somebody to buy your business, if you don't know this math, they're not going to invest in you. And I can tell you, I've seen it happen time and time again, where people are valued at $35, $50, $80, $95 million I've brought some brands to. But because the owner could not explain this simple sticky note, the bank walked away. So remember, folks, you gotta know your numbers. And anybody giving you some point of data that's not a one-day click is fucking lying to you, taking credit for other people's work. Now here's the thing. That's completely okay. Because if you understand the contribution to the bottom line by every channel, it doesn't matter how much they lie to you. Because the only metric that you give a fuck about is spend. That is the hack, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, with that, I hope you like these things if you enjoyed it. And if you really had fun today, because I sure did, hit that button right there, subscribe for more things. Anyway, once again, my name is Charlie. Nice to see you. I'll see you all on the internet.